Hey everybody, Patrick Hostis here. So I wanted to do this video to kind of wrap up my Waco series there, Government Sanctioned Murder. And I wanted to show you some of the things, some of the clips that I found, or evidence that I found out of the FLIR video, which I went over on episode 2. I put it as much of it as I could find in its entirety on there. So I'm just going to kind of go into it and show you what I found. So here's the first one. This is and by the way, the times, I'm going to go off of what's on this FLIR. I have no way of knowing how accurate the time is, but it's approximately correct. So for the purposes of the video, I'm going to go ahead and just use their time as kind of a guide. So I'm just going to kind of play it and then I highlight what I saw and I'll kind of go over that after I show you this first off. All right, so let me show you what I saw out of that clip there. And this is a highlighted version of it, so it should be easier to see. So right in that area, if you watch right here, I'll play it again. So watch right here, and just for the layout, right up in here, this area, this is what the FBI called the bunker. It's where all the women and children fled to when the gassing started around 6 a.m. in the morning, and like it shows down there, we're at about 11:22 a.m. at this point. So all the women and children have moved to the bottom of this structure here in a concrete kind of enclosure. It was known as the Records Vault to the Branch Davidians that lived there. It was what they believed to be the safest structure in the entire compound. And if you watch right here, it looks to me like some kind of a grenade, perhaps a flashbang goes off. If you watch right in here, you see it right there. See it? It's like a double flash, and you'll see there's actually video later on that I'll show you where you see the same type of disturbance. Now, I feel that I can say with pretty good confidence that that's more than likely something from the FBI, a flashbang or something like that. But in the interest of fairness, it must be said that is evidence that the Branch Davidians had grenades. As a matter of fact, some of the Branch Davidians, the very few that survived, one of them in particular said that he was given a grenade by Koresh that day, and asked, do you know how to use this? And so the guy, he ended up getting out of the structure and hiding down near this water tower somewhere, and was found later by the FBI, or he kind of surrendered to the FBI. When they searched the little hole, basically he stayed in to survive, they found a grenade in there. So they did have grenades, so you can't really come out and say with 100% certainty that, oh, it was definitely the FBI's grenade or flashbang or whatever. More than likely it was, but there's a possibility that it was a Branch Davidian using one of their kind of homemade grenades. It's kind of hard to tell, especially when you can't trust anything coming out of the government. It makes it very difficult. So what we have to do is analyze the information that we do have, like this, and see if we can come up with some answers. All right, I'm going to go ahead and show you the next clip here. All right, so let me show you the highlighted version here. What I see is a tank advancing into this building to put some gas, more of that CS gas they were using, and it looks like the rear door opens, two figures slide out, and one of them opens fire in this area to suppress something, or target something. It's a common infantry tactic used with armor, so um, who these folks were that came out of the back of this tank. I mean, they're obviously federal agents of some kind. There's some rumor that they were Delta Force or something like that. I have no clue. Like I said, you can't really evaluate the evidence that with that kind of targeted precision when you can't trust anything the government says. So it makes it a little difficult. So let me show you the highlighted version here. You see the tank here. Incidentally, the reason why this white part's on the back is that's the exhaust of the tank. So obviously that's going to be the hottest area. That's why it's bright white right there. Now they appear, and this one's opening fire on that area. And remember, the women and children are located back here in that area, so possibly in the line of fire. So that's what I see there. I'll play this next one here for you. Now, there's no disputing that that video shows something on there. Um, it's so much so that even the FLIR operator noticed it and put his cursor over it to mark that, so later for review somebody would know that there was some sort of an anomaly there. Um, it looks to me perhaps like some flashbangs, but this is around the time the fire started, so it's a little unusual. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this highlighted version here. And you're gonna be wanting to watch, and I believe it's. I'll let it play through before I say. I think it's up here or up in this area here. Boom, boom. It looks to me when I slowed it down like three different explosions, but it's really hard to say. You can see the FLIR operator marked it there. I'll play through it again. Boom, boom, boom. So I don't know what that is. It could be flashbangs. Tanks right there. They fired in excess of 350 40 millimeter ferret rounds, yes, ferret rounds into this compound, which are pyrotechnic and could have easily started the fire. The FBI, the feds, Justice Department, what you want to say, sat there and lied about it for years, saying they didn't use any pyrotechnics until it was proven beyond any reasonable doubt that that is exactly what they used. The Texas Rangers did an investigation and they found ferret rounds throughout the whole thing. The few surviving Branch Davidians reported that they had seen ferret rounds being used, heard them being fired through the walls. Clive Doyle, one of the survivors, said that one of the other Branch Davidians was hit in the face with one and it knocked him down. So they were firing rounds in there that could start fires. I don't, in my own personal opinion, I think that the Branch Davidians were planning on burning themselves if the feds tried to break into the compound before Koresh was done with the Seven Seals. And you can look into that a little bit more, but he was basically saying he was writing his interpretation of the Seven Seals. So I think he gave instructions that, if anybody tries to interrupt this process, burn the building down, we'll fulfill the prophecy or whatever kind of, belief system he had. But I believe the FBI knew very well that that's what he's going to do. They had bugs in there, the listening devices. They heard pretty much everything that was said. They basically they had heard things like Branch Davidian saying, "Well, you always wanted to be a charcoal briquette," and suggest, talking about fuel and putting fuel in rooms and starting fires and this. And I mean, all this stuff was known to them. I mean, I know they say, "Oh, well, we didn't read it and listen to it till later." Yeah, they were so desperate to end this standoff. I'm sure they were listening to every single thing that was coming out of there. They literally had an army around the Branch Davidians. You telling me they didn't have somebody to clean up the audio and listen to it? I seriously doubt that. So I think they knew that by them doing this, they may precipitate him doing this action, and maybe he would fix their problems for them. All the evidence in there, the ATF raid and helicopter shooting through the roofs would all be gone. So my own personal opinion, I think Koresh set up he engineered the fire. More than likely, in my opinion, he ordered it and it was set on fire by Branch Davidians. However, the federal government could have also, fired those ferret rounds in there and hit some of the fuel-soaked rooms or whatever that Koresh already had in there. I mean, there's a million different variables. The bottom line is, if the federal government wouldn't have come in on April 19th, those people would not have died. That's a fact, and that's indisputable. So if you go in here on this next one here, and I'm just going to go ahead and play this one. So there you're seeing suppression fire again, or some sort of automatic fire being directed at that same area you saw being targeted before by the two guys that came out of that rear hatch of the tank. So, and play it again here with a highlighted version. Bang, 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 right in that area there. So, play it again. See, right there. Firing on that area over there. Suppressing or shooting or who knows, firing on somebody there. And, I wouldn't have such a big problem with it if they just would have been honest about it and said, look, we were taking fire and we had to return fire. A simple matter, what were we supposed to do? Now, this next series, this is the most disturbing thing, and that's shown in the entire FLIR video. I'm just going to play this first one without any commentary, and then I'll go over what I saw. All right. So what I see in that is in that area where you see the flashbang or the Davidian grenade or whatever it is going off. Um, let me see if I can. Let me get a little different angle here. Okay. Let's see. So this is where the women and children are. This is that courtyard where you saw the Davidian grenade or the ATF flashbang or whatever it was went off here. Now, the only exit open to these folks now is out here, going out this way. Now, incidentally, 15 people, Branch Davidians, were found dead with gunshot wounds in this area. And what I see is somebody right here around this area just unloading with automatic fire right on the exit where the women and children are located. All right, so go ahead and play that again. And you're watching in this area right here. You see the firing coming from there. Now, as far as who was pulling the trigger on that, it's difficult to say if it was exactly if it was the FBI. I mean, we can already show that the FBI or some federal agency was firing out there to at least suppress a shooter out there at best. At worst, they were just firing to fire. So, is this some sort of a federal agent firing on there, making sure there's no survivors, or is it a Branch Davidian who had orders to make sure nobody escapes the fire, nobody gets out, or was it a Branch Davidian that didn't want them to suffer the fate of being burned to death? It's very hard to know exactly which way it was, but I feel very safe in saying that you can see somebody opening fire in this courtyard with a fully automatic weapon on the women and children. They're firing in that direction, the direction of the only exit they could take to get out of there. Now, the U.S. government did do aerial tests where they had agents out, or I don't know who they were exactly, but people out there firing weapons and on fully automatic while an aircraft with a FLIR camera like this was circling overhead. I do have those tests, and if you put in the comments that you want to see those tests, I will put them on my channel. But I don't want to put them out there if nobody wants to see them. But it what I saw out of the tests is when they fire single rounds, you don't see anything. They fire like single rounds, you don't, it really doesn't show up. But when they fire fully automatic, especially when they fire over 15 rounds, it's very visible, and it looks exactly like what you see there with the gunfire coming from that area. It looks like those little flashes. These are not reflections off of something. FLIR does not capture reflections like that. It's measuring heat, not flashes of sunlight. So that's not what that is. I know that was the excuse the government tried to use, but that's not what it is. So there are still many questions that need to be answered about Waco. It's not over with now, now it's not, nothing's been resolved really. The people responsible for this operation are, spending their time, living out their days on nice government pensions. Meanwhile, you have nearly 100 people killed, murdered in my estimation, with absolutely no punitive consequences to the other side. No jail time, no nothing. Why is there one set of rules for federal government officials and another for regular citizens? If I botch something this bad and cost the lives of nearly 100 people, pretty sure I would pay a stiff penalty for it, and at best, I would never get out of prison again. But for some reason, if you slap on one of those snazzy windbreakers that says FBI on the back or any other alphabet agency, all of a sudden you're in a protected class. You're part of the patricians and you no longer are answerable to the plebeians' laws. Laws simply don't apply to them. And that's why Waco is important. It's important that we keep this issue out there. It's important that we never forget what the federal government did. And it's important that we always remain the watchdogs of our government and keep them honest. This has been Patrick Hostis.